There, we're live. There's two people on it. It's probably us. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi, John.
Oh, wow. This is super exciting. I hope people are ready for a Gen X sex talk because I certainly am.
It'll
Uh,
be very informative, I promise.
Very informative. All right. Kimberly Resnick Anderson, welcome to Small Talk. Kimberly is a sex therapist based in Los Angeles. She is also a professor at UCLA and really an on-air personality, like a TV personality. You have appeared on many shows. Talk to us a little bit about your television background, and then we're going to get into your professional background. Of course, I just want to go right to the celebrity status of Kimberly. But tell me a little bit about some of the shows that you've been on.
Well, this past week I was featured on TLC's new reality show called Virgins,
Yes.
on episode 3. And I interviewed one of the individuals of the 4 on the show who are going through the journey of exploring barriers to losing their virginity. And the woman that I worked with, her name was Sonali. And the production team brought her to my office here in LA. And I did a couple hours of therapy with her. And we discussed some cultural barriers and some psychological and emotional barriers. In addition to her physical problem, she has what's called vaginismus, which
What
is
is that?
it's a sexual disorder where the outer third of the vagina, the muscles contract so tightly that the hole closes up. And when there's an attempt to penetrate, it's like hitting a brick wall. Literally, there's no way to enter. Um,
Wow.
so I talked with Sonali, and that episode was aired this past week, and it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
And
So
there were
I
some
talked with
another.
Sonali.
And
Sorry, we're echoing. Keep
okay.
on going. Yeah, keep
Okay.
on going. Sorry. Technical error. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. The joys of live, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then there was a different TLC show called Strange Sex about a decade ago, and I was featured in about a dozen episodes. And that highlighted just a wide range of sexual differences and problems. And I was an advisor on that show as well and came up with some of the story ideas to explore. That's the extent. That's the extent of my TV work. But
You're
still
so
very
good on
fun.
TV, and let's talk about how you got into sex therapy, such an interesting specialty. Talk to us about, how that came about, because you've been doing this work for what, 30 years now?
About
20 years?
30,
Yeah.
33 years.
Oh my goodness. All right. So why and how does one become a sex therapist specifically?
Sure. So I can speak to my particular journey. I was very interested from a young age, from early teenage years, about the role of sexuality in our culture and in our society. And I found it compelling um, that there were so many mixed messages and mixed signals all the times coming at us. We were bombarded with all these competing inputs, and how much conflict that caused. And I also was really interested in who's faithful and who's not, and why, and are there ways to predict that, and um, how sex was so shameful in our culture. And I didn't get it. I just didn't understand why it had to be that way. So I kind of just immersed myself in everything I could get my hands on. I was an avid Dr. Ruth fan from
I
age
love that
maybe
you were a Dr. Ruth fan.
15.
By the way, we should mention that Kimberly, it's hard to tell here, but she is a Gen X. You are a Gen Xer.
I am a Gen Xer. Yes, yes, we are contemporaries, John.
We are contemporaries, and you grew up with Dr. Ruth, as did I. And you grew up in Ohio. I always thought Dr. Ruth was like a New York thing because she was on New York AM radio, but she was in
For
Ohio as
sure.
well.
Well, she was based in New York, but had a syndicated radio program that was national, and a talk show eventually that was also national. So she was like my rock star hero. And when I was able to meet her, it was like meeting, my ultimate. I don't even know what to say.
She was your idol.
She was my idol. She had such an influence on me. And you've been to my office, and I have a picture of myself with Dr. Ruth that is one of my most prized and beloved possessions. So I wanted to write a book. I wanted to have a show. And I knew that I couldn't just pursue those things without some education and some training and some credibility so that people would take me seriously. So I was very strategic with my education, undergraduate degree in psychology, master's degree in clinical social work, and then a 5-year postgraduate fellowship in clinical sexuality at a university affiliated sex clinic in Cleveland. So I just really went down the rabbit hole of learning as much as I could and training with the best people and attending conferences and speaking at conferences and doing research and learning about research. And 30 some years later, it has not lost its luster. I'm still as fascinated by human sexuality as I was 40 years ago. So
What is it? What is it about human sexuality that you find so interesting?
it's it's everything. It's everything, Um, It's our life source. We are bombarded with messages about sex all the time. People divorce because of sex. People marry because of sex. People cheat because of sex. It's just so kind of fundamental to our existence. And yet we're not allowed to talk about it. It's taboo. It's shameful. It's dirty. It's wrong. And all this stuff is just so confusing and overwhelming to the average bear that they often develop some sort of sexual dysfunction or discomfort with expression, or they try to deny their sexuality, or they become preoccupied with their sexuality. And so it's just all the different extremes, right? From asexuality to compulsive sexuality, polyamory, ethical non-monogamy. Uh, there's just so many pathways that people choose to pursue in terms of their own individual sexuality, and it can be very painful. It can
Mhm.
be uplifting. It can be transformative. So I really just want to help people make friends with their sexual story, become aware of their arousal template in a safe environment so that they can explore what it is that they're sexually responsive to.
Mhm.
And it's just my pleasure. It's an honor to facilitate those conversations. I help couples talk about their sexual preferences and fantasies in a way that they've never spoken about, even though they've been married for decades, even though they've been having sex for decades. They've never had a conversation about sex or what they like or don't like. So I help couples get in touch with their own preferences and then communicate those preferences to a partner or partners. And I just want to depathologize sexual differences. I work a lot with individuals who have kinks or fetishes that come to me because they feel judged and shamed in most mental health settings. And I'm known for providing a judgment free, safe place where people can explore alternative or unconventional sexual interests.
I mean, you do so much. It is interesting that you work with people who have unusual sexual. Well, I guess I don't know. I shouldn't say unusual. That's judgmental. But they have sexual fetishes, right? Um,
Unconventional. Yeah.
Unconventional. That's a good word.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why you're the professional here. I, talk. And I'm only. I know you've been given clearance to talk about some of these things, but what have been, in the 30 years you've worked, what have been some of the more unconventional fetishes that have walked into your office?
Oh, wow. How long do you have?
Give me one. Give me one.
My hus my husband likes to say I'm fun to have at cocktail parties because he'll say, "Honey, tell the story about such and such."
Oh God.
Um, so,
You're also good to have on Substack Live. Yes.
oh, well, thank you.
But who?
I go, yeah, question? Did you wanna say?
No, no, no. Just tell me who. Tell me maybe one. Let's share one to get.
Okay. Well, I've treated men with obscure erotic interests, things you wouldn't think might be sexual, like, balloons or shoes or rubber or fur. or glass or metal or plastic or diapers or human waste.
Well,
So that's just a little range of the things that people come to work with me about, to explore kind of, where did this come from? Can I change this? Um, is it a problem? Is it okay or not okay that I'm sexually responsive to this? How do I tell my partner or my wife or potential partner about this? Do I have to tell them about this? If I'm fantasizing about it, am I betraying them? So all those sorts of issues come up a lot, and people come to me to kind of work all that out.
I mean, somebody who say has a balloon fetish,
Yeah.
how does that come about? I mean, how do these things? Is it always very different, or do you see patterns with people who have certain fetishes?
I would say patterns and no patterns. So sometimes there are trends, and other times it just seems really random and arbitrary, and I can't get to like some big obvious, like, aha. It's
Yeah.
because when you were 3, this happened to you. Um, but for example, I've treated a number of men with enema fetishes, um, who are sexually aroused by the fullness and the pressure of the fluid in their abdomen. And I treated a man who would stand in front of the mirror and look at his abdomen getting bigger, almost to where he looked pregnant. And
Whoa.
the more pressure, the more pain, the more discomfort, the better his orgasm. And in his case, we were able to track back that he was given an enema when he was 4
Mm.
by a grandmother who thought enemas were the cure for everything back in the day. And he received a couple of enemas as a kid, and just something just got like imprinted, and he became
Wow.
really, really preoccupied with this, and to the point where he was calling hospitals and medical centers and misidentifying himself as a patient who was scheduled to have an enema, and pretended to have questions about the process and the protocol, so that these women, these nurses on the phone, would answer questions and discuss enema uh, practices with him while he was masturbating on the phone.
When I woke up this morning, enema fetishes was not on my bingo card of things that I was going to talk about. But this is so fascinating. All right. Um, I want to talk to you specifically about Gen X, but we're probably going to talk about all the generations.
Okay,
But I
let's
want
go.
to, you've had so many people come in and out of your office, people of all different age ranges.
Yeah.
And you probably see patterns. And I'm curious, and of course, you also are a member of Gen X, so you're living it as well. But
Proud
what
member of Gen X.
Gen X, right? We're a Gen X file. So what are you seeing now? Like, I keep reading articles. Like, I've seen a few articles. Certainly, there was one recently in Modern Love in the New York Times about a woman who is a Gen X member who's saying she's having the best sex of her life,
That's right.
and sort of
I
talking
hear
about
it
how
all
she's.
the day.
So
I
that's
hear it all
really
the time.
interesting to me. Now, in her case, her story was that she had actually left her marriage, and was, with new partners. But tell me about so you're hearing that. So, wow. Tell
Yes,
me
I'm
more. I
hearing
need to hear more.
women in their late 40s and 50s sort of claiming their sexuality and their sexual power in a way they've never done before. Um,
So
our
interesting.
generation has more sex than the generation above us and the 2 generations below us. There's been a lot of research on this. We actually were the generation that started having sex younger than any other generation.
Hmm. That
Um,
seems. That seems. I'm surprised to hear that, because I always feel like my Gen Z seems to be having sex much younger. But no, we're the ones.
we're the ones that lost our virginity much younger than other generations. So I think there's a couple of reasons for that. We've always been known as the latchkey generation,
Right.
right? Because it was in the 70s and 80s when women really entered the workforce in significant numbers. And there was more economic opportunity for moms to make money. And so we were kind of the least supervised generation in the history of probably America. We came home and we watched TV and we watched movies and we had sex when no one was there.
Oh,
Um,
it's interesting. So that was why. So like their parents weren't around, so we could. I mean, I do have some high school memories that may or may not resemble what you're talking about right now. But so
yeah,
parents weren't home, so there was more sort of freedom
more
to
freedom
do that.
to
Yeah.
explore, right? And now so many young adults can't afford to have their own houses, so they're living with parents, and it's cramping their style. They're getting cock blocked
Mm-mm.
by their parents because they can't exactly invite someone over and just go down the basement and
They're
have sex because mom or dad or grandma or whoever is there. And so the increased cost of living has had a significant impact on access to privacy because so many young adults can't afford to live on their own, so they don't have
That
the
is so
opportunity
interesting.
to have sex. They don't have the privacy to have sex.
Now, this is in the U.S. And Canada, et cetera, because I know I lived in Japan for a little while in the 90s, and it
Hmm.
was a similar situation there where people couldn't afford housing, so they lived with their parents. And so what they did there is they created these things called love hotels, which were these
Exactly.
like,
Love hotels.
yeah,
Right.
remember Love Hotel? You were in Japan recently, which is where you would
Yep.
go and have sex.
That's right.
We don't have love hotels here, unfortunately.
Not
We probably
yet,
should,
but
and maybe that's
I think it's
a good
coming.
business idea. Yeah, it's true, right? It should.
Yep.
Maybe they're coming.
I mean,
There's still a
we
real
have
stigma
massage
attached.
parlors, we have strip clubs, where you can pay sex workers to have sexual experiences with you. I think soon enough there'll be, we have dayrate.com. You know what that is?
No, what's that?
Dayrate.com is where you can go and get a hotel room just for a couple of hours to have sex and not stay overnight. So it's unsold hotel rooms.
Wow, did not
And
even know about this.
yeah, well, there you go. There you go. And so people can go on there and say, okay, well, I can go to the Hilton right now and have 4 hours for $40. Or I
That's
can
wild.
go to this hotel and I can get 8 hours so we can have sex and then we can go to the bar and have a cocktail and then we can swim in the pool. And it
That's
just
not. It's
depends
actually
on,
that seems like it would be a good thing maybe to bring into your relationship because
I encourage it all the time, not
right,
just to get away from kids or grandchildren, but because the novelty of a different bed and different sheets and different smells and different
right.
sights and sounds activate dopamine because they're new and unfamiliar, and the novelty of that is going to put the gas on the put your foot on the gas of the sexual car. So even if you have privacy in your home, just going to a hotel for an afternoon can really do wonders.
All right, I want to go back to why Gen X was sort of the first to have sex young, or the youngest generation to start having sex. Now, you mentioned the whole latchkey kid phenomena, like coming home with no, we also, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like the generations before us got married, like when they got married to have sex, right?
That's
Like
right.
that was kind of the thing. We
That's
seem to
right.
be, no, I'm thinking of the boomers. They were kind of the free love generation. So it might have been the generation before the boomers, like the silence, but what, what else? Like what are some other reasons
So
that we,
the boomers were free love, but just a percentage. There were a lot of people who were still conservative. It was like either you were a hippie or you weren't. So there was
right?
still
The
plenty
silent
of
generation. Yeah.
conservative value, right? A dichotomy. I don't think
Yeah.
more baby boomers were hippies. I think less baby boomers were hippies.
Right.
Um,
The silent majority or whatever they called them. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so, we were the first. The pill was available
Hmm.
for young women my age. Um, and it wasn't available for women, the
Thank you.
generation before me. And so we had access to contraception that previous generations didn't have. Um, Also, there was a shift in societal values around premarital sex. Women now had money and didn't have to be dependent on a man and didn't have to get married to be supported. And so women were marrying later, having kids later. And it really did change the landscape in terms of sexual expression and experimentation because we had choices. We had
Right.
choices that our moms and grandmas didn't have. So I think that was
But
part of it.
but at the same time, there's this other thing happening during when we were growing up, and that's like AIDS, the whole sort of movement towards safe sex.
Yep.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about how that played into the way Gen Xers think about sex.
Yeah.
I think I find from my understanding and what I read and hear, maybe they're a little more cavalier about safe sex, the younger generations than we were.
Right.
And maybe I'm wrong, but
No,
anyway,
you're not wrong at all.
so the fact that we were having sex earlier doesn't totally jive with the fact that we were also kind of scared of sex in a way because there
That's
were
right.
so many bad things associated with sex.
That's right. That's exactly right. That is a bit of a dichotomy
Yeah.
right there. So, yes, AIDS was the first STI that could kill you,
Hmm.
right? Gonorrhea, syphilis had been around for centuries, right? But you take a pill or you get a shot and you get better.
Yeah. Unless you
HIV,
lived in like the 1800s. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
right. And a lot of people died too, right? Um, but AIDS you would die. It was a death sentence.
Hmm.
And it did profoundly shape our notions about having multiple sexual partners and having safe sex. We were the like condom in your face generation, right? Lots of PSAs about using condoms. So on the one hand, we were the earliest generation to have sex, but we were also the generation faced with lethal consequences around sex. So it is a bit of a mixed bag there. I think that we're safe. We just were safer because we knew that we could die. Since then, advances in medicine have made HIV life expectancy almost same as normal.
Hmm.
It's no longer a death sentence. And so today's generation, they're not afraid of AIDS like we were because you can live with it. You can take a cocktail of medications and have a significant quality of life. So that
And
is,
there's like PrEP, right? Isn't there medication you can take if you're concerned that you might have been with a partner that is
yes,
HIV positive?
there are prophylactic medications that you can use to reduce your risk of contracting HIV if you're in a high risk population. For example, like a gay man has multiple sexual partners. You can take PrEP, you can take Doxy. You also can do it after the fact. So if someone has a sexual encounter without practicing safe sex and then they're feeling uncomfortable, they can go and get a pill and take it afterwards. Um, the thing about these medications, these preventive medications, is that I think they give men an air of invincibility. They're like, "Oh, I can't get this because I'm on
Right.
PrEP," and so they're not using condoms because they feel like they're protected. And so I think we're going to see a little slip backwards, maybe in terms of safe sex expression. But yeah, there are a lot. It's there's never been a
Yeah.
better time to have an STD in terms of treatment. And
There's
stigma. There's so many. I've treated probably in the last year 18 people with herpes who are bordering on suicidal ideation
wow. Now, why is that? Just because of the stigma attached to it?
because it doesn't go away. It doesn't
Hmm.
kill you, but it doesn't go away. One of my current patients said that when she was in sex ed in like junior high school, her teacher said herpes is the gift that keeps on giving.
Hmm.
And she just like latched onto that and now is probably 25 and completely terrified of contracting herpes. Um, so yeah, there's a big stigma around that. But there's also herpes only dating sites where people on that site all have herpes, so they don't have to worry about exposing their partners.
Hmm.
That seems to be the one that there's still a lot of stigma, but it's so common. It is
And it's
so common
highly contagious.
and highly contagious. I treated a woman who was date raped,
Mm.
um, and she was a virgin, so her initial sexual encounter
Oh
was
God.
rape, and
Oh,
she contracted herpes.
oh my God.
So she had herpes forever and had never chosen to have sex. And what
Horrible.
it Yeah, it was horrible. So she would date men
Uh,
2, 3 times and then break up with them because she was too embarrassed to say that she had herpes, and she was suicidal.
so I guess the moral of this story is, even though there's all this that, well, in that case, I mean, poor thing, but in general, the moral of the story is, even though there's a lot of ways to prophylactic
Yep,
alternatives to condoms, and that
yep.
maybe condoms are still the way to go.
Yes, and I
Uh,
found an interesting trend that you might also find interesting is that it used to be that women required the no glove, no love. And men were sort of like, oh, do I have to? Can I go bareback? It feels so much better, blah, blah, blah. But I'm seeing a trend where men now are complaining to me that they want to wear a condom and their sexual partners, their female partners don't. Women are offended now. If a
that is
man
interesting.
wants to use a condom, she'll say, what do you think? I'm dirty?
Oh wow. Now that's wild. So let's unpack that a minute. So is that not in our generation? That's like a younger. Is that more of in the
That is
younger generation?
younger. That is definitely like, yeah, millennial and Gen Z, where women are feeling offended that a man would request or try to put a condom on. I've had men say to me, I felt like I was forced to have sex without a condom against my will. I mean, really upset, really feeling like they got bullied by women.
Now,
So
why do you think this is? First, from the male perspective, why do they want to wear condoms? And back in the day, it was like, oh, bareback, blah blah blah. Like, why?
because our education and campaigns around safe sex have penetrated, no
Yeah.
pun intended. And
Thank you.
and so guys are better about it than they used to be, and it seems now, and these are just trends. I'm not saying this is like a sweeping trend, but in my office and my clinical experience, I'm finding that men are reporting that women are less comfortable using a condom, and that
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 is
they're the
so
ones who are
interesting.
like, you don't have to. But it's because the men are agreeing to do it without condoms because the women are um, feeling the men are trying to prove to the women that they don't think they're sluts or whores, right?
Hmm.
The woman say, "What do you think? I'm a slut? You think And the men are like, "No, no, no, that's not what." And then they're like, "Well, then if you don't think I'm dirty, then why would you need to wear that kind of thing?"
Right. Well, aren't women getting the same safe sex messaging though? Like, why are they so willing to take a risk?
You know, I don't know.
Don't
That's a
know.
great question.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if
Yeah.
there's some cultural pressure, or yeah, or
I think women
that.
know that men prefer not to wear a condom, and that it enhances sensation. And some women don't like condoms either. They don't, some women get irritated from condoms, or they might be allergic to certain types of condoms. But I think I don't know, there may be something meaningful about connecting in that way without a barrier. I don't know, but it's concerning.
That's very interesting. All right, let's go back to Gen X here for a moment.
Yeah.
You had talked about how women in our generation are feeling more empowered than ever, and feeling freer than ever, and are maybe having better sex than they've ever had in their lives.
Yep.
Does the same hold true for men? Because I don't
Unfortunately, no,
see
John.
yes, because I don't see a lot of articles from men talking about this. So let's
Right.
discuss. Let's
Okay,
discuss why.
so men peak sexually at 22 years old
Hmm.
in terms of their sexual function and capacity. Men peak sexually at 45.
Wow.
So, sexual satisfaction decreases for men with age, but it increases for women with age for a lot of reasons. Um, I think for our generation, there was a lot of feeling um, that sex was for boys, it was for men and not for us. We had to put out to cement a boyfriend, or we had to put out to be an appealing partner. Um, and I think women didn't feel entitled to their own sexual satisfaction and pleasure. It was sort of like, I'll do this because you want to. And I think over time, women have discovered new capacity and realized that it's for them too, and that they have all this untapped exploration to do. And so, especially after a divorce, women are having sex with new partners and being much more adventurous, having more orgasms. We also have treatments for menopausal symptoms. We have laser treatment. We have hormone replacement therapy that our mothers and grandmothers didn't have access to. We have pelvic floor physical therapy. We have so many things to keep us and our vaginal tissue healthy and not atrophy like it did in the past. When it comes to vaginas, it's a use it or lose it situation for sure. So even with masturbation, when blood is drawn to the genitals, it keeps the tissues healthy. It keeps the tissues, supple and soft and moisturized, and it's really important for women who don't have a sexual partner to continue to make use of their uh, genitals to avoid atrophy.
But men, not so much.
Men, it's important to so-called milk the prostate, uh, to ejaculate at least twice per week to maintain or to have protection against prostate cancer. And orgasms are just generally healthy and good for people. People who have 2 orgasms a week over their adult lifespan live 5 years longer than people who don't have that many orgasms on a regular basis. So it not only improves your lifespan, but your health span, because it's good for mood. It's good for sleep. It reduces anxiety. It's a pain reliever. It is an immunity booster. So all these
Yay,
things,
orgasms. Yes.
yay orgasms, and yay semen, because the semen has protective qualities as well, that can help women if semen is deposited into the vagina, and we suspect swallowed and anally as well. Don't swallow or receive semen from someone that you don't know is safe. But if you're in a committed relationship and you trust that there's fidelity, receiving a man's sperm or semen, seminal plasma, has many, many protective benefits as well. It's a natural antidepressant, pain reliever, immunity booster, cancer fighter. So there's lots of health benefits to having orgasms and to having sex and to receiving semen if you are having sex with men, whether it's a man or a woman. Butt plugs that are popular among gay men. One of the theories is that the plugs are used to keep the semen inside so that they can soak up, so to speak, the benefits of that.
Also not on my bingo card this morning, the butt plug semen retention. But I'm glad to know this stuff. This is fascinating. All right. So we have talked about, women are feeling, more free than ever. Men, not so much. So is that, so how do we, and the women that you're talking about are feeling free, are they generally out, like divorced, or are we talking about even when they're in, their
I'm
marriages for
seeing
25 years?
Yeah, I'm seeing couples and the women are dragging their husbands in and saying, he has no libido. I lost 30 pounds on Ozempic. I'm feeling sexy. I'm feeling, feminine. I'm feeling frisky, and I can't get this guy to respond to me. And so it's the women that are complaining more
What do
so
you,
than,
what does one do in that situation? Because it seems like intractable in a lot of ways.
well, what I discover when I meet with the men for an individual appointment, which I'll do with a couple, I'll see them together and then each party individually once and then back together and then only together after that. No more individual sessions. But what I hear is that these men have a hella libido, just not for their wives.
Hmm.
So either
That's interesting.
they no longer find their wives physically, sexually attractive and appealing, or they no longer find them emotionally or psychologically attractive and appealing. A lot of men have said things to me in the last few years, like, my wife's mean to me.
Hmm.
She's mean to me, and I don't want to put my penis inside of her. She's mean to me. She hurts my feelings. She's a bitch. And unlike the sort of stereotypical, men don't care, men will have sex anytime, anywhere, I'm finding more and more men who feel like they really need an emotional connection in order to be sexually responsive to their wives. So it's really a little bit of a flip.
And it's interesting that doesn't matter as much to women, like, because obviously guys can be assholes to them, but
It
somehow
does
they're
matter to
able to
women.
find it.
It
Yeah.
does absolutely matter to women, but it's always mattered to women. What I'm finding is that now suddenly it's also mattering to men.
Okay. You mean as they get older?
For sure. I have a couple that they called yesterday, 72 and 70. And she said, he has no interest and I'm not done with my sex life. Can you help us? Can you help us get back on track? I had another call last week from a couple and she said, I don't know what's wrong with him. I could pole dance naked in front of him and he's completely disinterested. And the women are saying, I want sex. And if you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to get it somewhere else. And they're saying, you know, my preference is to be sexual with you. But if you're not able to follow through on that, I would like to have your blessing to have sex with other people.
That sort of brings me to a topic I want to talk to you about, and that's polyamory or consensual non-monogamy, which I feel like seems to be more the domain of people that are younger than me. It seems to be like millennials and Gen Z seem to be much more open to this kind of situation. First, probably we should define for our audience, just in case they don't even know what that means, what I'm talking about when I talk about, and they're two different things, I guess. So let's define that and we can talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
So what is polyamory? Like
So
yeah.
polyamory just means literally loving many.
Mm-hmm.
Poly meaning many, amory meaning love of many. And what it means is that people who identify as polyamorous believe that they can love multiple people and that we shouldn't be constrained to just loving one person. And they believe they can have an emotional and sexual connection that's meaningful with more than one person. So they usually have a primary and a secondary or a couple of secondaries, and everyone involved knows about it. It's on the up and up. There's nothing going on in secret. And there are rules and sort of negotiations around the boundaries. And sometimes people will find a partner who's also polyamorous, then it works better. But if one person's poly and the other person isn't, it tends to not go well.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a problem. And consensual non-monogamy, that's sort of the same as polyamory. It's just
Nope, it's different in that it can be just sexual. There doesn't
Okay.
have to be an emotional component. So you don't have to love multiple people. So if you are polyamorous, you might be in love with three people or have three or four partners, all of whom you feel like you're in love with.
Hmm.
With consensual non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy or open relationship, there's a sexual component outside of the primary relationship, but not necessarily full-blown love or emotional connection. Now, there may be, but there doesn't need to be. And some people agree for their partner to have sex with other people, but d- don't want or feel threatened if there's a significant emotional intimacy component in addition to the sexual piece.
I mean, it's hard to say, but what percentage of your practice, and let's just in general, and then with the Gen Xers specifically, really
Yeah.
practice consensual or
Now, I would say
non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy?
in my practice, I would say there's an overrepresentation because I'm
Right.
known for helping people negotiate these boundaries, and so people will reach out to me specifically for help, and so it's a
Right. So it's not.
biased population. I think if
Yeah.
you ask the average sex therapist in California or the average sex therapist in Ohio, um, you would get very different responses. So in California, we are more sexually open and progressive. And so people feel freer to talk about their sexual expression. That doesn't mean there isn't ethical non monogamy occurring in Ohio or Kansas or Wisconsin. It just means that people aren't as comfortable talking about it. I practiced for over 20 years in Ohio, and I had plenty of patients who were engaging in swinging and open relationships. They just kept it more
On the
quiet.
DL. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say
Does it?
my
Yeah.
practice of the couples I treat, I would say one third engage in some sort of open
And are
relationship.
most of is there frequently one person is into it and the other person is not?
That's the that is the trap. Yeah. If it's mutual and both people see benefit in it and feel comfortable with it and enjoy it and want it for their partner. In other words, they have what's called compersion, which
Mhm.
is if
What's
you're happy,
compersion?
I'm happy. If
Oh,
you are experiencing joy and pleasure, then I am experiencing joy and pleasure, even if I'm not involved, right? It's like the thought of, oh, if you can have fun, go for it. That makes me happy. That's called compersion. So, unfortunately, in a lot of the couples I work with, one person has compersion and the other one doesn't.
yeah.
And it can get really, really complicated, really, really fast.
Because I was going to ask, like, it's not like we've figured it out, right? I mean, these are problems that, of course, couples have had for centuries, right? And it's like, oh,
Right.
it's all about, consensual non. That's going to be what's the thing that is going to save marriages. Is like,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are very skeptical that,
yeah,
so it's not a sure thing, and it
for
doesn't,
sure.
and it can be
Very
very
few
harmful.
couples, very few couples do it successfully. When they do, it's very profound and meaningful and brings them closer. It also is something that couples might do for a season or for a reason.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be permanent. And I've treated couples who every third year will go to like a sex resort and then they put it away and they don't do it again until they go 3 years again back to that same, place. Some people do it for a summer. Some people do it when their kids go to college, a lot of people never do it. So, people will say to me, we think we've done what we needed to do and figured out what we needed to figure out, and we're going to close our relationship again.
Hmm.
Sometimes after that, they're fine. Sometimes after that, resentments build, uh, and it seems like damage was done, and there is something fundamentally changed between them. It's tricky. It is a high risk business,
Yeah.
um,
It's
but
not a sure thing.
not a sure thing. But when it works, it's I've seen couples really kind of evolve to this place where they feel sorry for other people who don't
Yeah,
get to
I mean,
experience.
I have a friend who's married and has a very happy marriage, but she doesn't have sex with her married
Yep,
partner.
that's right. That's
She
another
has
thing.
sex with she has a partner that she has sex with, and then the two husbands of hers like are friendly. I mean, it's so wild to me. She
Yep,
doesn't have kids. I don't know. I feel like that might be a different dynamic if she had
yep.
kids. She's also about 10 years younger than I am, maybe more. You know, from the outside, I'm like, wow, that's an interesting, or maybe even kind of like enviable
Yeah. I
relationship
mean, a lot of
situation.
people like
But
each other. They have history, they have kids, they like their life together, but they don't have sex anymore for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's chronic pain, sometimes it's a health problem, sometimes it's they just lost the hots for each other, but they like the day-to-day friendship, and so they might have a sexual partner on the side and not split up. There's what I learn each year more and more that people have their own contracts and they come up with their own unique negotiations and plans, and that what's right for someone may not be right for someone else, but that really whatever works. I am very pro ethics,
yeah,
and I think that secrets are very destructive, but as long as you're honest and you can agree to whatever terms you like, I'm good with that as long as nobody's getting hurt.
well, one of your mottos, which I think you got from Mr. Rogers, who is, you know, a Gen X hero, is,
Yes.
which I love, is what's mentionable is manageable. Um,
Yay, John. It's my favorite.
talk to me about how you bring that into your relationship. This idea of being what's mentionable is manageable.
Yeah. So many people are afraid to communicate, initiate, be vulnerable, share their true feelings about a variety of topics, including their sexual preferences, expectations. And I find that once there's a conversation, people are generally much more reasonable than we give them credit for. And I've talked to men and women who said, "Oh, my spouse would never, ever go for that," or "My spouse would never be comfortable," or "My spouse would never even
Hmm.
consider," or "My spouse would never even have a conversation about that." Or "I could never share that with my spouse. I would be shamed," or this or that. And then, you know, either through coaching with me or with facilitation from me in my office, these conversations are had and they're profoundly liberating and refreshing and meaningful and easy to have if you just can do it.
Yeah. And do you need a therapist to do it? I mean, some people might not be into having a therapist. Some people might not be able to afford a therapist. But do you, I mean, obviously, I would imagine you encourage people to have therapy. You are a professional therapist. But do you think it's almost it's very difficult to do it sometimes on your own? Like you need a kind of
It's very
intermediary.
difficult because of the cultural messaging that we internalize that, sex is taboo or dirty or women don't want to hurt men's egos and men don't want to hurt women's feelings. And if they've gained 15 pounds and they don't want to tell them that they're less attracted to them or that their breasts are sagging or that, for a lot of reasons, we want to protect our partners. We don't feel entitled to our sexual satisfaction, especially women. And so it's really hard to talk about, especially if you've never talked about it. After 37 years of marriage, all of a sudden you're going to say, "Honey, can we chat?" It feels awkward. It feels like there's this impenetrable dynamic in place. And to change that up sort of randomly without guidance or coaching can feel very daunting. I treated a woman who was a virgin on her wedding night. She and her husband were both virgins. And when they had sex on their honeymoon for the first time, she said he stuck it in. And she said it didn't feel good. It kind of hurt, but she made pleasurable sounds so that he would
Hmm.
feel like he's, pleasing her. She said, ooh, ah, right? And then he came in 2 seconds. And then he was like, "I'm the man." He thought that he did it right. She didn't have an orgasm. She faked.
Oh,
And then the next night on their
yeah.
honeymoon, they had sex again and she faked again. And then the next night they had sex and she faked again. And then she faked for 37 years.
Whoa.
She never had an orgasm with her husband and she never told him because she felt like she had been lying to him for so long that to tell him now would be cruel and make her look like a bad person. And so I said to her, "You must tell him. You must tell him." And she's like, "Are you crazy? Why would I do
Right.
that? That would be so mean." And I'm like, it's mean not to, right? So we went back and forth, and eventually she had her husband in the office, and she told him that she faked on their honeymoon and that she had been faking all these years. And guess what he did?
What did he do? Well, he walked out. He got up and left. No, that's exactly what he didn't do. What did he do?
He
Huh?
cried.
No way.
He cried, and she said, you're not mad?" And he said, "No, I'm not mad. I'm sad." And she said, "What are you sad?" And he said, "I'm sad for you and I'm sad for me and I'm sad for us." And she knew how to have an orgasm by herself. And so I facilitated some sessions with them and she taught him how to touch her. And they were having all orgasms all over the place in their mid 60s.
Wow. That's amazing. What an amazing story. See, what's mentionable is manageable.
You
Um,
got it, John.
I got it. I've learned one thing. Um, it strikes me we are talking a lot about heterosexual relationships here, and I'm wondering, does that also does a lot of what we're talking about also cross over into um, non-heterosexual relationships, same-sex marriages, etc.?
I think I
Um,
think there's a
the
lot that
trend,
does and some things that don't. Like I
right?
see gay couples and one is much more interested in sex than the other. So you're going to have discrepancy regardless of your orientation. Just humans have different interest levels, right? You're going to have people who like coffee and don't like coffee, who like steak and don't like steak. And so there I treat gay men and gay women and the same arguments and conflicts come up. Now, there are couples that don't see me. They don't have the conflicts. So I'm seeing the people who are having the conflict, right? About libido, interest, frequency, so on and so forth. There are plenty of people who don't come see me because they don't have problems, right? But the people who do come see me, they're the same because a lot of the problems are just human problems. And then there are some specific dynamics that are under the umbrella of same-sex relationships that make it unique, but a lot of it is just human stuff.
Yeah. Well, one last topic I want to talk to you about before we open it up to the audience, and I hope you guys have some questions for Kimberly because, well, she's great. She has great answers, and I would hopefully she can help you out with some stuff. But I want to talk to you about the way we know each other, and a true confession is that you host a men's group that I am part of. Right? It's like
Yeah.
there's a bunch of guys. We come to your office once a week and we just talk about our stuff. It's not just sex stuff. We talk about everything. We just talk about our lives.
Yep.
And it has been really a life changer for me, like in a really impactful way. In a way, and I was, to be honest with you, quite skeptical of it at first because just the idea of like getting together with a bunch of dudes and talking about like my life. I'd had experience in the past doing this, and it was just I didn't like it, and I had kind of bad associations with it, kind of like this Robert Bly beating the drums, hugging trees kind of stuff that I hated. Um, and this is your experience. My experience with you is so much not like that. And you also host women's groups, right?
I do.
So you
Yes,
you
I
you
do.
do it and I just want to encourage people not to necessarily join your group. There's only one of you, but there is something profound about having people get together of the same sex and talking and having a place to talk. Now, I think maybe even more so in some ways for men because women are so good at talking to each other
That's right.
anyway.
That's
Men are
why
not.
I have more men's groups than women's groups because
Yeah.
men need it more and men appreciate it more and men grow from it more. Yeah.
So I want to put a little plug in for men's groups here. I don't know how many men have joined us. I see a lot of women's names here. It's fine. But I want to put a little plug in for men's groups. And can you explain to me, in your opinion, why they're so important? I'll give you my take, but why they can be so beneficial and maybe even encouraging your partner to be part of one.
For sure. By the way, the groups that I run are my favorite part of my
I
work
love that.
and the highlight of my day.
Particularly my group. I think that might be your absolute most favorite one.
Of course it is.
Right.
By the way, folks, there's a little healthy competition between my men's groups, Tuesday versus Thursday. And they're all like, we're your favorite, right, mommy? We're your favorite.
Right.
You like us the
Right.
best. And I say, sure,
Oh
you're
my
my
God.
favorite.
Such
But
guys.
our group rocks. Our group is amazing.
Good group.
We actually could use some new blood, because I would like to see another one or two get in our group. Because we lost some people.
Yep.
Um,
But anyway, my question was, why is it important for men to have that? Why would you encourage men to be part of some sort of community group, and maybe even encourage women to encourage their men to
yeah,
be part of a group?
yeah. Because men are not socialized to be intimate emotionally with other men.
Hmm.
And being able to talk to other men about day-to-day issues, relationships, sex, work, money, stress, in-laws, is just a great um, release that most men don't have because men need to be strong and independent, especially in front of other men. Um, and this, my groups provide a safe environment to be vulnerable. We've had tears in the group. We've
Oh yeah.
had,
Well,
we've had,
mine, of course,
yeah, because
not mine.
you're the most manly man I've ever met, John.
Yes, exactly.
um, these guys are like ride or die. I mean, you've really come to love each other platonically. And when one has a problem, one of the men in the group had a health scare recently, and everybody was like rallying and checking in with him to see how he was. He felt like he had this incredible, unique support system that he never would have had if he hadn't been in the group. We've watched men go through breakups and reconciling and getting married and getting divorced and having sexual dysfunction and then not having sexual dysfunction. And,
I mean, the hardest thing for me about it is I'm a writer and I just want to write about all this stuff. And I know that we're sworn to secrecy, so I'm not going to ever reveal any of it. But man,
we should
some of
co-write a book.
We could. Some of the moments are just unbelievable.
Aren't they just so powerful?
Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing about it. It's like, I feel like, and this is my armchair psychiatry, but the world, there's just so many lonely men in the
Yeah.
world right now. And you see it playing out in horrible ways, like shootings and,
Yeah.
and I just feel like this is one solution, is just getting men to talk to each other. And it's really, we aren't conditioned and taught to do this in a way. And this is different than just having good guy friends. I have a lot of good guy friends.
It's different because,
but I can't talk to my guy friends about certain things.
Yep.
I just can't. And so
and what's nice is I've sort of trained you guys to challenge each other too if you sense bullshit. So not only are you supportive of each other, but you also will call each other out, which is something that a friend might not do, right? They're not going to risk offending you or overstepping. But in group, a man might say, "Dude, that's not cool. That's not what you're doing. That's very unethical." Or why don't you just talk to your wife? Or and so it's not just blind support, but a space where people can challenge and encourage and give feedback to each other, right? Like one of the guys in the group might say, am I the asshole here? Right. And then other people will say, no, you're not the asshole. And then one guy might say, yeah, I kind of think you're the asshole. Right. And so getting the range of opinions and getting to know each other on such a deep level where you can hold each other to account is just really, really special.
And also, like, out in your life outside of the group, you start to think about things a little bit differently. Like, even when you're having to make a hard decision or something bad happens to you, so you kind of think about, well, how would I explain this to the group? Like, it kind of makes you think about things in a different way, where it takes it out of just you dealing with it and thinking about, well, how would I share this in my community? Would I be proud to share this with my community, my group?
Yeah,
I think that's important.
That's called internalization of the therapeutic process.
Hmm.
And it means that they're sort of the group members are in your back pocket
Right.
in a way, metaphorically, and you can imagine what
Yeah.
they might say or how they might respond or how they might call bullshit. And then you can adjust your behavior or decisions accordingly without them needing to actually even be in the room. And I'm changing names here, but it might be like, let's just say that you think something in your mind and you're like, oh, Tom would definitely not approve of this, right? And then you think,
Yeah.
okay, well, maybe Tom's right, or maybe I should do this way or not, or Jerry would definitely tell me that this is good and I deserve this and I should do this, right? And so it's being able to anticipate what they might say, how they might support you, how they might call bullshit on you, all that. It just gets internalized in a way that is very, very helpful on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis.
Better than that voice than being your mother or your wife or whatever, which is, I think,
Right.
sometimes too.
Or
Yeah.
even your therapist sometimes. I mean, I put you guys
Yeah,
in a room because you're going to talk to each other differently than I'm going to speak to you.
that's true.
Right. So I'm there to facilitate, but I'm going to count on some of the group members to give you feedback that is going to land differently with you than if I gave you that feedback.
Wise advice. So, okay, we are at the 1 hour mark here. I do want to open it up. We have a bunch of people on the call with us, and I don't want to, hog you all to myself. If people have any questions for Kimberly, feel free to put it in the message board here. This is kind of like love lines. I'm like, hey, long time listener. Let's see if anybody has any. So far, I don't see any questions, which is fine. We can wrap up because I want to be mindful of your time. You have clients, you have people to see, problems to fix, crises to deal with. Um,
Penises to mend.
exactly. Fetishes to hear about. I so appreciate you being so honest and candid with us and teaching us so much about sex and about topics that people are embarrassed to talk about oftentimes publicly. And you are certainly an open book and have absolutely no reservations about talking about all this. And the world would probably be better if there was more people like you in it, and also more people that were willing to talk to people like you. So
I
I
have one.
appreciate you.
Can I mention really quickly one thing that I think is important?
Yeah.
With social media, access to porn on our phones, um, that is foreplay. That men are titillated 24/7. It's very easy to have a sexually arousing experience alone within a matter of a minute. And I think that might also be why the younger generation is having less sex because they
Hmm.
can have sex for themselves. And a lot of the men that I work with that are under 35 have come to prefer solo sex over partner sex. So that'll be round two for us to talk about, John.
It was in my arsenal of questions and we didn't get to it, but the role of porn and, how porn is so much more accessible now to people than it was when I was growing up. It was like, oh my God, I got this guy to buy a Playboy for me in the store. And then I'm going to go, like, I had like my one Playboy magazine.
Yep.
Now it's
Yep.
everywhere. Right. And it's easily accessible, and you can have, like you've said, you can watch, the most attractive people having sex, and it's easy and convenient. So why would you want to have real sex? Like, I can
Yep.
see that being an issue. So
And men also become dependent on their own hand from masturbation, the pressure, speed they can control, right? So the technique is hard to translate inside a vagina or an anus, and also the themes depicted in the porn are hard to compete with when you're having like vanilla sex with someone, and it's not as exciting or adventurous as what you're able to see. So a lot of men have ED with their partners. They can't get hard or they can't get off. So they might be able to maintain an erection, but they can't climax because they're just not excited enough.
by the way, my mom just joined. So I don't know. She joined in she joined in the most dirty part. Hi, Mom. Um,
No
I
dirty. No such thing as dirty.
I know, I'm just teasing. But you mentioned men. Are
Yeah.
men, specifically when we're talking about porn, is the same issue does not apply as much to women? Like, are they having less sex because porn is so available to them?
Women use porn for sure. There's female friendly porn. Some women like hardcore porn. I'm not saying that they don't. Women aren't as visually inclined in terms of sexual stimulation. And women tend to prefer like reading romance novels or erotica where there's some intimate connection or emotional piece. But I don't want to get hate mail from women who are like, hey, I'm all in hardcore porn. I don't need any of that shit. But
all these
men
things are general.
men have 10 times more testosterone, so they're 10 times hornier. So they're more likely to make use of that, and they're more visually stimulated. Right. So, yeah.
All right, that is a whole other conversation. The porn, and just the advent of social media and how that's changed the experience of intimacy for people, and and even we didn't even talk about like Instagram and just following girls on Instagram, and it's just so much more available and accessible than it was at one time, and there's less mystery. And I just don't know how that impacts the way people think. I mean,
and meeting each other because they're connecting digitally. So it's another reason people aren't having as much sex because they're not leaving their parents' houses.
But of course, this is, again, I feel like, is this a Gen X problem as much as it, or is it more of a problem for people younger?
Generations for sure. I would say under 40. Yeah.
Right. All right. I am going to, I don't know why my camera just popped out. Hold on a second. Okay. Did my camera just pop out? Okay.
But you're back.
I'm back. That was weird. Kimberly, thank you so much. If people want to find out more about you, I mean, you have a website, right?
I do.
Anderson Resnick.
KimberlyResnickAnderson.com.
Yep. It's all there. And you are going to continue to be on I want to do a little plug for the TV show that you were on, which is called Versions. It's on TLC Go.
Yeah.
And are you going to be on any more episodes coming up?
I'll be in this next week's episode, but just for a short time. And I have a podcast people can check out called SexSavvy.com.
SexSavvy.com. Check out the podcast. Lots of incredible, good information, honest truth from Kimberly's knowledge over all these years.
What fun.
This is super fun. I love it. And by the way, if you like this hat, you can go to my website and order the hat. on my small. This is my cool Gen X file hat that I just designed my sex because I am a Gen X file.
Can I give you a plug? You are the face and the voice of Gen X, and you have a lot to say, and it's very exciting to be you and exciting to watch you explode in this space. So congrats.
Well, thank you. I will send you your check later, and I appreciate that plug. Everybody, love you. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you maybe in 2 weeks on Small Talk Live. But if you like what you hear, oh, by the way, Kimberly's on Small Talk. I'm sorry, on Substack, so you can find her there, and you can also find me at Small Talk. So this is John Small saying goodbye.